Morning, Bobby. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to have you on the show again. It's been a year and a half or something like that since you and I were on the show chatting about your world in private equity and how things have been going. But the last 18 months has been pretty interesting for you. And, the purpose of today is really diving into your experience as a buyer and looking at the companies that are out there within your niche and really being able to, kind of peel back some layers for the owners so they can understand what you look like or what you're looking for when you're looking at these businesses as an investment, as a partnership, and a future together. So maybe for the listeners, give a little bit of background of MCM Capital again, and then, explain to us what niche that you're in and why you guys focus on that.
Sure. Happy to do it. And first, we don't have horns like all people think that private equity do. We're not the devil. There's actually some great private equity firms out there with a lot of good people. And hopefully, more business owners start to find those groups. But in any case, MCM Capital has been around for 26 years. For the last 26 years, we've had the same mantra: is investing in niche manufacturers and value-added distributors, $15 to $75 million in annual revenue, and $2 to $8 million of EBITDA. And how we define niche and value-added, as we describe manufacturers and distributors, is through the gross margin profile of a business. Businesses can run really lean, can drive down costs, especially in terms of SG&A, but you can't hide revenue over cost of goods sold. So for niche manufacturers, we look for businesses generating 35% plus gross margins, and value-added distribution, at least in our mind, is 25% plus gross margin. And for the last 26 years, we've been partnering with incumbent management teams. We've done the 100% buyout, management buyout, but generally speaking, we focus on leverage recapitalizations, which generally means the business owner sells a majority of his or her interest to MCM, and they maintain operational control of the business. They continue to run the company moving forward. They're able to put some money in their pocket, mitigate some of their personal risk, as well as provide equity. We provide equity to the broader management team to get everybody rowing in the same direction. So generally, that's how we've worked with businesses for the last 26 years, and how we will continue to do so moving forward.
So, for our listeners, and debunking some of the private equity, notions that are out there, and kind of like you said, you don't have horns. And I think that there's such a wide spectrum, and people don't realize it until they go down halfway through a journey with someone. They realize that they don't even have the money. And can you just maybe, Bobby, just a couple of broad brushstrokes on how many private equity firms are out there, and where do you get your money, and what are some of the other models that are out there? And because I believe that you guys are different and almost more towards the family office model than it is more towards some of the other people that don't even have their funds. So just maybe set a little bit of context for the listeners.
Sure. So to put a number on private equity funds, Ryan, I couldn't even give that number. There's thousands. And each private equity firm, really, they're segmented by size of their fund. And what I mean by that is the size of your fund really allows you to invest in a certain end of the market. So for us, currently, we're a $75 million fund. And as a $75 million fund, we're smaller than 85% of private equity funds, 75% of private equity funds. And we focus on the lower middle market. So if your fund is larger, you're focusing on larger businesses. If your fund is smaller, generally speaking, you're focused on smaller businesses. And our money generally comes from us. It comes from high net worth individuals, business owners who have exited their business, who believe in what we're doing and want outsized returns. It comes from institutions like regional banks, and it also comes from endowments and state pensions. Generally speaking, the majority of our dollars come from the institutions and endowments, but the majority of our investors are the high net worth individuals, business owners who have exited their business. And we like to have those folks invested in MCM because they're a great resource for us. Usually they've been through the process as how they've attained their net worth, and we can leverage their skill set or expertise as we look at evaluating different opportunities.
Well, and I think, really following the money is an important thing too, because in it's all about finding the motivation even for your investors, which then goes down to you, which goes down to why you buy these companies. So, explain, when someone gives you a chunk of cash, and whether it is an endowment or a bank or an investor, what are the terms and conditions, and what are the conversations that you're having? Because then we'll flip the conversation going towards the buy side of what you're doing. But what are the things that they're expecting from you guys?
Yeah. So usually what they're expecting are outsized returns, and it's the definition of outside returns certainly varies at any point in time. Specifically for a point in time today, outsized returns in private equity would be, I'm going to be honest with you, probably 17% plus. Historically, private equity firms have been underwriting at least 25% returns, but there's such a overflow of capital these days in the private equity market because everybody's looking for outsized returns. What you see in a lot of these state pension funds is that they're underfunded.
Mm-hmm.
Their liabilities certainly outweigh their assets. So they're trying to find outsized returns in the marketplace. So they're flooding more dollars into a riskier asset class in private equity to try to get those returns to try to be made whole.
Can I give and I don't know if you've heard this story, Bobby, I'm sorry to interject because I think it's relevant for the listeners, where I was reading this article about Texas, and I don't know if it was Austin, Houston, or Dallas. I can't remember which city it was, but they had run their pension numbers they could retire at 55. They had the underwrite, yeah, already laughing, right? 55.
Yeah.
I think they had run their underwriters ran the numbers at like 8% rate of return indefinitely, and their mortality rate was like 70. So these people are literally living in retirement on the cash flow of the city for like 45 years at an 8% rate of return. So they're literally going broke because they can't afford to pay all these people.
That's exactly right. And that actuarial data would have worked probably in 1930.
Yeah, when everybody's dying at 45.
But today it just doesn't make any sense. So that's the problem that a lot of state pension funds are faced. So they're flooding the equity markets with dollars to try to drive outsized returns, which in turn, from an ownership standpoint, at least right now, I would never tell a business owner to be a market timer, because at the end of the day, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for most, and you would like to exit or take some chips off the table when you're ready, and not trying to market time. But to be honest with you, right now, businesses are trading for ridiculous values that aren't sustainable. And if you're a business owner, and for us, when we're focused on leverage recapitalizations, where the incumbent ownership stays in the business, continues to run it, and you might be very excited that a private equity firm or a strategic buyer or whomever is going to come in and offer you, one or two turns more than really what your business is worth. You better hope that every bet that you make moving forward works, because the equity that you're going to have moving forward might not exist anymore. And I look at it from my perspective. If I was a business owner, it would be really hard to turn down an extra $5 or $6 million. Okay, it would be really hard. But I would look at how people are structuring that transaction, because you have to always look at the amount of leverage being used. And the amount of leverage being used could prohibit you from growing the business further, and that equity that you had or retained is going to be worth nothing. So you had this deal up front where it was $5 or $6 million more, and they had you roll some, maybe that extra $5 or $6 million back into the business, and it's going to be worth nothing if the business has a hiccup or a bump in the road, because then the bank's going to own your business. So I'd be very careful, especially in this type of market, when you're looking at financial structure and how people are structuring the transactions in terms of amounts of leverage that they put on your balance sheet.
Well, and this is why I'm excited for our conversation, because I want to dissect everything that we're talking about, because I think there's so many business owners right now that are getting knocked on the door, and my partner called it fishing. A lot of these people are fishing because they're trying to deploy their money. So that's why I started at the motivation, because if they're overpaying, it's because they're trying to pay for their obligations. depending on where the money comes from. And I think that's what's unique about you guys is, you're not necessarily promising the returns that these other people are promising, because you can get money from these people easily because they're suffering as well. But how that impacts your ability to run your business going forward because of how much money you got and how much leverage you have, there's a lot of false assumptions that are placed on this that might not work.
I would tell you that we are promising those returns, and actually we have delivered on those returns. But what I would tell you is how we're different is that our pace of deployment of capital isn't the same as everybody else's, because we're very patient, value-oriented investors. We look for the right business and the right people. Now, given your LP base, so that's your limited partners, people who are giving you money, depending on who they are, whether they're fund of funds or which are large organizations that look to invest, take people's money as a whole, and then invest in 10 or 15 other private equity firms. So it diversifies your portfolio risk. Those types of investors are looking for pace of capital deployed. So when we sign up with our LPs, we have 5 years to invest the money that we're given. The fund itself is 10 years. So by the time we buy businesses, generally speaking, in the first 5 years, we should have all of them exited in 10 years. Now, that always doesn't work, right? Our average hold period is 6.5 years. So we hold businesses a little longer than most, but we're also investing in lower middle market businesses. We're investing in great companies, but most of the time when you're a small business, you have 1 or 2 flat sides. And what we try to do is round out those flat sides. And with smaller companies, it just takes a little longer because we're investing for the future. And then some of the returns suffer from other private equity firms because they're paid, they have so much money that they have to deploy sitting on the sidelines. And now they're, maybe they're in year 5 of their fund. And if I was a business owner, I would always ask, where are you in your fund? Because at certain times, private equity funds feel so much pressure. If their money isn't deployed, it's not used. And your investor base isn't happy because now I allocated, $20 million to MCM and they only deployed 15 of it. I had $5 million allocated to them that could have been earning money elsewhere.
Right.
So some private equity firms feel that pressure, and they will overpay for a business to deploy that capital. So if I was a business owner, I would always ask where the private equity firm is in the life cycle of their fund.
Well, and I think it's so important because the questions that you just are arising is most owners don't know to ask these questions because it's all about the motivations. You just follow the thread to figure out where the behaviors are going to come from, which kind of trickles into the next part of the conversation, which is, the ongoing partnership. And, that's where you hear a lot of these horror stories because they overpromised, they overpaid, and then they've got to squeeze blood out of a turnip, and it's you and your company and your culture and everything. So I think it's extremely important. So let's maybe shift into when private equity firms and you guys are out there looking for businesses, how are you finding them? And then let's kind of just walk through the whole process because, starting from, talking to them, you're looking for 2 to 8 million EBITDA. So how do you start the conversation? And then let's just kind of walk through the typical journey.
Sure. So historically, 75% of our deals are done outside of investment banking process. And we're able to do that because we focus more on relationships than anything else. It's very tough to develop a true relationship and understand who that business owner is, and vice versa, as a business owner, who your potential partner is going to be in a, call it 90-day diligence period. Right. And you meet them once during a management presentation, and you're supposed to evaluate it. You know what it'd be like? It would be like going on online dating, going on one date, and then deciding to marry that person. Now, sometimes that happens, right? Love at first sight, that may happen. 99% of the time, it doesn't. So what we like to do is start to talk to businesses really before they get to that threshold for us. When they're $5 million, when they're $10 million, when they're 15, when we can start to develop a true relationship and without any expectations from either side, because both of us know, that from the business owner standpoint, that they're not of size yet for MCM to invest in. And from our standpoint, the business owner isn't ready to do anything yet. So it's great to develop a relationship and have casual conversations without an expectation that a deal needs to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So over a long period of time, 3, 4, 5 years, we develop relationships with business owners, and they see how we act, how we are as people. Culturally, do our interests align? And then it starts to make sense. Now, don't get me wrong, value has to be there, and we're not trying to steal any companies. What we're trying to do is develop relationships so both sides don't make mistakes. And in 26 years, we've never lost money on any leveraged buyout we've ever done. And it's not because we're the smartest guys in the world. We're not. It's because of we're very focused on the businesses that we like to invest in, where we can actually add value. If we're only providing capital to the table, that's a commodity. I just told you how many private equity firms are out there.
Yep.
If we're only providing money to the table, we are not going to drive outsized returns and shareholder value for the incumbent business owner, their management team, and then we always put in an incentive comp plan for the entire employee base, all the way down to the shop floor. Now, they're not equity owners, but once you start to hit certain numbers, they're going to benefit from it too. We just spend a lot of time directly sourcing transactions. Now, we do have a lot of relationships with investment banks. We have to, because if you think about the life cycle of our relationship period, 3 to 5 years with business owners, and we only have 5 years to invest that money, we have to, look at businesses from intermediaries or from investment banks. But generally speaking, I'll be honest with you, we're 99% of the time, we're not going to be the highest bidder. What we're going to do is really be a partner for the business owner, and that retained equity that business owner has, we're going to make damn well sure that it's worth something. We will do whatever we can to work on a business to continue to grow shareholder value and not squeeze it. Like you said, trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip. What we try to do is we grow the business organically, and we forecast, when we're modeling a company, we forecast a degradation to earnings in the first year, specifically because most of the time, the executive management team isn't fully there. So we invest in resources from an HR standpoint. We invest in machines or CapEx. We invest in sales and marketing. And we know that business was possibly not starved, but it didn't have all the resources that they needed prior to our involvement.
Well, and this is exactly why I wanted to dive in with you on this interview, because it's not just about the turn and burn for the numbers, because that only goes so far. When the business owners that are listening to this, you're diving in to really see true value within the business, which I think really sheds light on your due diligence process and really building a company to sell. And where are the places that business owners are focusing on? Is it the right places? And where is this quote unquote value that you see? And how do you actually go in and do this stuff? Because I do believe that a lot of business owners, they're either starved financially because their banking relationship's terrible, or they're starved because they don't have the right people or the right processes or the wrong connections in their supply chain, all these different things, right? Which it's about gluing them all together, layering the finances, but then also the people and the partnerships. So let's go in, Bobby, instead of just, the turn and burn and deploying the capital in 90 days, like a lot of these other people are doing, explain the due diligence process and what are people doing that they could be doing better, and how do you apply, let's just start with the due diligence process. When you find someone with, 2 million in EBITDA, going through what are the things that you're looking for that they're doing well and then not doing well, and then how do you marry up what you guys do well with them?
Sure. So, we do probably standard business diligence. It's usually is going to take 60 to 75 days. And if you're a business owner listening, don't underestimate this process. It is going to take you away from your business. We are very cognizant to try to be as least disruptive as we can to the business. But, in the second part of the series, you can hear from one of our CEOs that we partnered with, and he can, give you really the down and dirty of what the diligence process was like. And I guess specifically how it was from our perspective. But, it's business due diligence where we really try to understand a company's competitive advantage, a reason why they exist, and why are they going to exist moving forward? How are we going to grow this business together over the next 5 to 6 years. It's getting an understanding of their people. When we talk with the business owner, what would you like to have? If you had endless resources, what people would you have? Do you believe today that you have the right people and the right seats on the bus that are going to get you from point A to point B? If not, how do we add those resources? What do you need? From a financial standpoint, we do a quality of earnings. We hire an accounting firm to come in and do some forensic accounting, look under the hood, make sure, as the numbers were represented to us, that they are what they are. Obviously, if not, we have to answer to our shareholders. And, what we want to do is pay a fair value for a business. But if the numbers aren't there, then obviously, things might have to happen. And for the business owners that are on this call, what's becoming more commonplace today, and us personally, we like it. Now, the business owners will have to spend some money, but they will get a quality of earnings report done prior to somebody getting involved. And the reason that we like it, is we're always very honest with our valuations with companies. Some other firms are not as honest. It's not all of them. Generally speaking, private equity firms, back up what they say. But there's going to be some that are going to go in there and tell you your company's worth X, and really during this diligence process, hammer you on different things to say your business isn't worth X, it's worth Y. Now, if you get a quality of earnings done prior to getting involved, that eliminates any of possibly eliminates any of the things that they could possibly find to start to hammer you on price. So it's becoming more commonplace now for some folks to get quality of earnings reports done first. And if you want to spend, I think it's around $50,000 to do it, and really ensure that group, that partner that you're partnering with, is not going to retrade, I would suggest doing it. We also do.
Can I interject there too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think
Sure.
Maybe I want to take a couple of these in chunks, because Bobby, I think a lot of people don't understand how important this is when you're going in there, whether it's you as a buyer or anybody. And I think the financials is a good place to start, because it's the foundation. And explain, because shit, man, we didn't know our numbers, the first time, you're just running and gunning and selling and going, and when I say knowing the numbers, maybe let's layer that, take a layer back. So let's say you do the quality of earnings, but how clean someone's financials are, and what does that even mean? Is it, really having the P&L and the balance sheet and everything where they actually know what it is that's happening in their business? And I think I had someone on the show and they said financials are the language of business. So you're starting there. So explain, what are the things that you're looking for, and then how do you emotionally, or because I know you're probably thinking about it when you're sitting across from someone that knows their numbers versus someone that doesn't, and how that impacts your interaction with them.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Maybe I'm too nice of a guy, but there's just an example. A few weeks ago, we were looking at a business that would be an add-on acquisition for one of our portfolio companies, and the business was generating $7 million in revenue, and about, when he sent me his financials, roughly $180,000 of EBITDA with 35% plus gross margin. So for me, it didn't make sense. So I told the gentleman, I said, I'm assuming you're running this business as a lifestyle business. So there's a lot of things, car payments, country club dues, a lot of things that are running through your business that shouldn't be moving forward. And he said, yes, you're right. I said, okay, so here's what you're going to do. I want you to, pretend like you sold your business to MCM tomorrow, and we were the owners of the business, and you were no longer able to, provide these lifestyle benefits. I want you to write all of those down, and I want you to give me a value associated with them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that back to EBITDA. And the reason that's important to you is because that's how I value your business. If I value your business, say it's 5 times EBITDA of roughly 200,000 of EBITDA, your business is worth $1 million. Now, if you bring these add backs together, and now it's 500,000 of EBITDA. Now your business is worth 2.5 million. So
You are too
I
nice.
just want you to, yeah. But so in my mind, and what I told him, and what's interesting is he said, Bobby, throughout this whole process, I've never felt like you were full of shit. I never said one time during this process that you were full of shit. And to me, that's a compliment, right? But what I told him is, this is a once. I said, you have a wife, you have children. I can appreciate that. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for you, and I want you to maximize, the value of your business, because I wouldn't feel good if you're going to continue and you're going to be a large part of our organization going forward, large part of our portfolio companies. I don't want you coming in the office pissed off every day
Right.
that, I got screwed. MCM should have given me this. They should have given me that. I don't want to do that. It's life's too short. What we want to do is create win-win situations for everybody. And if we can't do it, then we can't do it. If I got to him, and ultimately what happened just the other day is, he said, Bobby, I just can't do it. He said, I'm in my mid 40s. Right now, I think what you gave me is a fair value for my business. The problem is my business just isn't large enough yet for me to feel comfortable. That I got a couple kids going to college soon, and if things were to go into hell in a handbasket, or I were to get fired, and I told him, I said, I can't promise you the moon. I said, can I promise you that you're going to have a job for the next 5 to 10 years? The answer is no, Matt. So what's going to happen is we're going to sign a 2 or 3 year employment agreement, and that's all that I can guarantee you. Things may change, but at the end of the day, it's not my decision whether or not you stay. It's the CEO's decision. And if you continue to perform like you have been, there's no reason that you shouldn't be there moving forward. But it's just conversations like that, and again, it's developing a relationship. Now, a few years down the road, when his business continues to grow, and then he's ready, he's more comfortable, then I think it's an opportunity. So we're going to keep an ongoing dialogue and see what happens from there.
So yeah, and it takes time to build the relationships. And as you guys are going back and forth, there's a lot of this trust factor that's getting built. And I think, whether in the due diligence process, it's the financials and all the things that you're looking for to be able to see, does it reflect the individual that's sitting across from you? So how would that be different for someone that comes in with their financials all muddied all over, and not only just add backs and all these different things, but knowing literally where things are at or not. So a lot of lower market companies, the owner might have that, or the CFO that's just sharp. So would you pay more, or tell me how that experience is, like when you have, through the due diligence and the financials, where you're asking questions about cost of goods sold, or the different things as you're looking for the narrative, the financials, someone that totally has everything locked in and can at least answer your questions versus someone that can't. How does that impact the situation from trust and the value that you're willing to pay?
Well, I would say it definitely impacts it heavily at the end of the day. When we're talking to a business owner that knows the ins and outs of their business, to your point, the financials are the language of business. And if a business owner understands what aspects of their business affect, the gross margin line, what affects the EBITDA margin line, from an inventory standpoint, inventory turns, days of AR outstanding, days of payables outstanding, how those interact, with the business in terms of cash flow, where the company needs to be if they want to invest in a certain piece of equipment. Can they handle that forecasting? It provides a lot more trust with us moving forward. That one, the business owner understands the numbers, understands, what they can do to affect the numbers, and we're more confident in the value that we can offer to a business owner versus somebody who, really doesn't know the financials. They have, their financials haven't been audited. They haven't even been reviewed. They're running QuickBooks. There's a lot of things that we see and they don't have a controller, certainly not a CFO, much less a controller. They have a bookkeeper that's maybe not even a CPA, doing their numbers. We have to really understand the veracity of their numbers, and are they true? So for us, it's not that we don't trust the business owner. because they could be a great person, trustworthy, but it's not trusting the numbers that are presented to us. And I think we would certainly be more comfortable, and I don't know if we would necessarily pay more, but we'd be more firm on our number.
Well, and I think, and I want to let's make sure we go back to the due diligence and other parts of it, from contracts and client concentration and technology and equipment and stuff like that. Now, let's make sure we go back to that. But I think it's a perfect example on, so if someone's completely got their stuff together and knows everything, yes, so the dollar amount might be the same, but can you explain, Bobby, how you mitigate risk as certain uncertainties pop up? How does that affect the deal structure and the payments? So, if let's say you got the two ends of the spectrum, 100% cash down versus all earnout. I mean, I know there's a lot of different, creative ways that you can structure things in between, but how do you mitigate your risk through deal structures and payments situations as you start to see things that are red flags like that?
Yeah, well, there's certainly different ways to do it. The easiest way, what's becoming more commonplace now, similar to business owners getting a QOE done prior to having a private equity firm or a group look at their particular business, is getting a rep and warranty insurance. So all the representations and warranties that a business owner is assigning, to the private equity group or backing, all the representations he or she is making are now being able to be covered by insurance. You can get a $5 million rep and warranty insurance for around $200,000 to $250,000, and most of the time, both the private equity group and the business owner split the cost. So from a liability standpoint, from a business owner, as long as things are disclosed, and knowledge qualifiers are in there. To my knowledge, we haven't had any of A, B, and C.
And explain that. So you're talking like environmental, legal, like what are the things that what they might be discussing?
Yes, all of it. To my knowledge, there have been no environmental issues at this property. And rep and warranty insurance, will certainly cover that. So from an indemnification standpoint, purchase price, usually some of it is held back for indemnification claims for, call it, 12 to 18 months. With rep and warranty insurance, that $1 million, $1.5 million doesn't have to be put into the indemnification escrow because it's being covered by the rep and warranty insurance. So now that business owner will get more cash up front and not have to worry about whether or not there's going to be a claim or they're going to get not get it moving forward. Does that make sense?
No, totally. And I think, it's a lot of totally. And I think it's a great piece of advice. And there's so many different ways we can go with the deal structures, but and I think the biggest takeaway is and these are like, as you filter down and you're looking at perfect partnerships, right? So let's maybe go a layer above as you're looking at people and you're going, not a fit. Because I know that there's a lot of different good qualities of the ideal partnership and how you're willing to work to make the deal perfect for them. But as you're deselecting people, and you're getting in that due diligence process or in the primary phase like that, the red flags and stuff like that, what are the things that so you got all the financials, but as you're doing some of the due diligence, and whether it's contracts or technology or the employment or the key managers, explain what you're looking for and what are the big red flags that will literally make you deselect them because it's not even worth paying for.
Yeah, what we try to do is a lot of diligence up front before we put together an offer, but obviously you find things afterwards. So in terms of business diligence, when we're looking at customers, and usually I ask for the top 20 customers by revenue over the last 5 years, because we look for customer concentration. The value that we pay for a business is always a function of risk. It's always risk return. So from a customer concentration standpoint, what you'll see is maybe there's a large, Fortune 500 company, okay, and they have, call it 25 locations. Now, when that business owner sent me their customers, usually beforehand we're not disclosing names, or maybe they're named differently in their CRM system. That I would go through the customer list, and now I'd see, okay, now there's 20 locations from GE, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the business owner looks at each one of those locations as a different customer. But from our standpoint, GE is one customer.
Mm-hmm.
And the risk profile then of the business changes now, where you didn't have a customer that was larger than 9% of revenue. Now, when I add up all the GE folks and all their locations, maybe that is now 50% of their revenue. And while they are different locations, and most of the time from a corporate standpoint, it's going to be a corporate buying program. So that may change above the locations where they're saying, we're going to use a different supplier. Here's who you're going to use. And now all of a sudden, 50% of that revenue that we had for that business is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see certain things like that, when we see same thing with supplier concentration, it would be very similar to that. Obviously, it increased the more supplier concentration you have, the larger the risk profile is for us in the business. So we wouldn't move forward, or we would just say we do want to move forward, but because this concentration, this is what the price is going to be. Now the business owner has to really decide if they would like to move forward.
Let's take that. No, I think it's really applicable, and a lot of people have these issues with the large customer concentration, or we were a Canon and a Lexmark manufacturer. We were a distributor, so we had.
Yeah.
We were diversifying through managed IT services and such, but they got us by the balls. You know what I mean? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
what happens if they change their licensing, or they at one point, I think when we first started, they had geographical exclusivity, and then they just said, well, nope, not that anymore. So then next thing you got
not anymore.
Yeah, 7 people competing with you. But so even though that might be the scenario for a business owner, if you and I were sitting across the table from each other, and you're hammering me like this,
Mm-hmm.
and I say, okay, that's fine. But I agree with you, and I see that. What if I were to say, well, you know what? So GE, that is the scenario, but I've actually gone in, and my team has landed a contract that has all the recourse for GE, and so that might be 40% of my revenue, but they cannot cancel that contract, and we've got certain minimum volumes that they are guaranteeing me over the next 5 years. Or same thing with the supplier.
Yeah.
Is there a way, because I'm mitigating the risk for me and for you? Is there how do you view something like that?
Well, so it's a very interesting question, Ryan. And I would tell you, if they're guaranteeing you volumes and it's a take or pay, I would say that mitigates the risk a lot. What you see is, for example, in aerospace, Boeing's a customer. If you have a long-term agreement in aerospace, in aerospace there aren't a lot of customers, so you may have customer concentration in businesses like that. Where Boeing or Airbus may be 30 or 40% of your revenue ultimately. Now there's long-term contracts in place. It's not take or pay, but our largest concern is not the contract and not exclusivity, because that's great. It certainly helps. But now, Ryan, tell me, what if you were 40% supplier to Boeing, and you're doing everything. You're qualified. You're on their A supplier list, and now Boeing has several incidents in their plants, and a few employees happen to die, or some planes crash. And now Boeing is no longer manufacturing airplanes. They're on hold for the next 12 months to figure stuff out. What happens to your business?
Right. Yeah. Or
So
Elon Musk actually invents a Hyperloop and no one rides any planes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or you're invested in Tesla. Now they can't produce cars. They're way behind the curve, and now they're running overtime. So from our standpoint, if you have customer concentration, regardless, and now take or pay is different, because basically you're guaranteeing me volumes. If you're guaranteeing me volumes, it's a little different, but still, you look at the mining and oil and gas industry, you can guarantee me volumes, then you're going to go out of business, and I'm stuck holding that.
Even if you've got the guaranteed payments, if they go into bankruptcy or they file, Chapter 11 or something, you are not highest on the debt list. There's people way ahead of you.
Yep. Yeah. And then the problem is with customer concentration is that if, your customer catches a cold, you're going to catch the flu or pneumonia, and that's a problem.
That's amazing. Because everything trickles downhill from that. And I think suppliers is a big, I was actually meeting with a customer, Bobby, and this all comes up, and it's so amazing how entrepreneurs don't look at their business like an investment vehicle like this. Because we're sitting there talking, we're doing preliminary due diligence, and we were saying, hey, so you've got a handful of suppliers, and they're betting the horse on all these really cool innovations that they're doing for the future. And I said, well, there's risk. And if you're riding these suppliers as your main horse, what happens if something happens to them? And then are you warranting the product or are they? And there was kind of like a head tilt because what happens? Who's
Right.
holding the warranty? I mean, because
Yeah. And so it's interesting going back to when you're talking about structure, and I got into rep and warranty insurance, then there's these other times, when you look at an earnout or a seller note. The seller note is really just it's a guaranteed payment, but it's not up front. It's 12 or 24 months down the road. But most of the time, how you're bridging some valuation gap is an earnout. So a business owner is going to tell me, yeah, my business is worth X today, but we're scheduled to get a $8 million contract next year that's going to annual revenue for the next 5 years guaranteed. Okay, how confident are you in it? Oh, I'm 99% sure that we're going to get it. Okay, if you're 99% sure, then I'm going to give you an extra $5 million in terms of value over the next 3 years if you hit X, Y, and Z numbers based on this customer. And then you really understand whether or not they truly believe in it or not. Now,
right.
Going into earnouts, I don't like earnouts, but particularly because we do leverage recapitalizations and we're partnering with incumbent ownership. I don't want that CEO to manage the business to hitting his or her earnout.
Mm-hmm.
What I would rather do is, okay, if you tell me that this is going to happen, how about if we hit overall numbers of the business? So I don't care whether or not we get this or not, but if we do, we're going to hit these overall numbers. And then what I would like to do is I'm going to let you buy back 10% of the business for $10,000. So I'm going to give you a clawback. So if we hit this, now you get 10% more of the upside of the business moving forward, because earnouts are all convoluted. It's fudging different numbers. What goes here? What goes there? As a business owner, if the earnout's based on revenue, is it the law of unintended consequences? Where now they're taking lower margin business in just to hit these revenue numbers. I don't want that. I want everybody's motivations the same, rowing in the same direction. So I would rather have overall goals of revenue and EBITDA, and then if you hit these over a certain time frame, you're going to earn 10% of the company again.
Well, what I think is really interesting is you're starting to, like, hopefully the listeners are starting to realize that it's all about negotiation and people both realizing that it's all about risk going forward and the truth and the numbers and the forecasting and the strategy. And, the opposite side too, which, you were saying, like, you don't want the business owner managing to the earnouts and, decreasing margins because it's revenue based. So it's funny because I would say that as a seller, you want it to be revenue based unless you've got a creative structure like you just described, because a lot of the times, these earnouts will be margin based, whether it's, a certain profit center or EBITDA or something. But guess what? The moment they sell to someone like you, they're not in control of the EBITDA anymore or the profit. So by
exactly
the way,
right.
You're looking to hit your quarterly bonus. And by the way, I think we're going to buy a semi today. And all of a sudden you don't get your 500 grand.
Yeah. And that may be true, but we let our entrepreneurs run the business. So we don't dictate. What we do is provide strategic direction. Now, if we have a CapEx budget approved for 2018, if you want to go buy a semi, and it's outside of this CapEx budget, you just come to the board and ask for approval, and you just have a business case as to why we want to do it. But so the reason that we put metrics in place if we have something like that is because we're not there day to day. We're not running the business. We want the business owner to really manage the business for long-term growth, not to be so short-sighted for short-term gains in terms of in earnout. So.
Well, no, I think that's a huge point, and I think that's also one of the things that's different between you guys and a lot of the people that are deploying capital extremely fast and trying to flip companies. And I think so because I want to come back to life after, which I know the second round of this series will be with Mark and you, and we'll get a really good peer into it. But I want to come back to that, but. Let's talk about your perception. So we've gone through the client concentration, some of the kind of the inner operational stuff and the finances, but now let's switch to the team and the employees and the executive team, because you've mentioned that you're partnering with teams, not necessarily, I mean, because it's
Yeah.
such high value for everybody. So when you're doing the due diligence, or you're doing that, like you're assessing a company, what are the things that you're looking for, and what is the best case scenario, and what is the things that you see a lot of people doing wrong as far as it comes to key employees and personnel?
Yeah. Well, given the fact that we work with smaller companies, generally speaking, what we see is the executive management team is the business owner. It's he or she filling all the different positions. And you laugh, but it's true. To the extent that they have someone, it's either a VP of sales and marketing or a COO. What we've seen historically is business owners generally underhire in the controller CFO position. They look at it more as a cost, whereas operations are going to drive revenue, sales and marketing are going to drive revenue, and the controller or CFO is just a cost that I have to have. What they don't realize is how important that business is, given that the financial statements are the language of business,
Mm-hmm.
and where a strong controller or CFO could come to the business owner and say, if we do A, B, or C, I've been looking at the numbers. We're looking at moving forward for the next year. We can buy this piece of equipment and accelerate depreciation, which would help our cash flow, moving forward. Or if we're, if we can make some adjustments through operations or sales and marketing, the throughput, we can drop this down to the bottom line. So we've seen that when we're going through our diligence. What we like to do is really spend some time with people. We like to see tenure. We like to see how they interact together culturally. How is the organization? Are everyone's interests aligned? Are people looking out for the best interest of the business, or are they looking out for themselves? We don't want I people. We want team. We want we. And we use a tool called the predictive index that really helps evaluate whether a person, it's not necessarily the right person, but are they the right fit for the position? Are they in the right seat on the bus? So a business owner would answer some questions, for your particular business. And we did this with Mark and his team, and he can touch on it further if he wants. But we had Mark fill out this survey and questions. What is a successful VP of sales and marketing look like for your organization? And then that spits out a certain pattern. So now when we go to evaluate either somebody that we have to hire, or somebody that's in that current position, do they fit that specific pattern? And then the business owner has to decide either no, they don't, and this is what we're going to do to try to get them there. And usually it's not the best course of action, or that person doesn't fit, but this is exactly where they fit, and this is where they'd be the most happy. So the predictive index really it's about needs and behaviors. So it's really understanding an individual's needs, and their needs are going to drive their behaviors, and in turn their success or failure in a particular role in a business. So and then we use that to really look at overall at a team, the team dynamics, because you always want to have some different personalities and different functions, and that way they work better holistically as an organization.
Well, I think you hit on a lot of really good key points there. And going back to your CFO controller point, we went through like four. My dad was like, "Oh, let's just hire the $80,000 person that is filling out like random forms." And we did that. And we got 100 employees, and so there's this. I think there's this. So with the CFO controller perspective, you talked about forecasting. It's really strategy, right? So whether you've got an accounting manager or controller who's historically just filling in data and logging what's happened before. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're looking for or someone that is strategically thinking, forward thinking, giving strategies on the cash flow, the sales, the operations, everything, right? It's way different than just an actual bookkeeper.
Yes, a CFO, and sometimes you'll find this in a controller, but more of a CFO is strategic in their thinking. The others are tactical. It's giving the CEO numbers. Here's a monthly report. Here's a quarterly report. whereas the CFO is going to the CEO of the organization and really being more strategic about their thought process when looking at the numbers.
Well, and I think the biggest, whether it's the whole executive team. There's this, and this might lend some insight on your guys' process and the value that you guys bring, or a partnership for an entrepreneur down the road. But there's this whole mental hurdle that I watched us go through, and I watch a lot of our clients go through. Where, okay, this is great, like essentially getting outside of the lifestyle business. You get to that
Yeah.
500 million in EBITDA, and you're trying to get to the 2, 3, 4. You hire 3 to 4 people that all of a sudden are pulling down $150, maybe 200 grand with bonuses to it, and all of a sudden it's literally coming out of your boat budget or your cabin budget, or all these things are
Yeah.
their investments. So it's an immediate investment, or it's hitting the cash flow. But explain, for the business owners who are on that kind of brink, how the short term expense or investment in the cash flow will impact the value or the multiple that they would potentially get, and or in between there too.
Yeah, so from our perspective, when we look at a business, so I'm looking at one right now that the business really doesn't have, to our point, doesn't have a CFO or a controller. They have a bookkeeper. Now it's a very profitable business. It's smaller in revenue than we typically like. It's $6 million in revenue, but 2.5 of EBITDA, and they don't have a controller or a CFO. So we need somebody in that role if we're going to grow the business and look strategically. So what we're going to do is, when I proffer an offer to the owners, I'm not basing it off of 2.5 of EBITDA. I'm basing it off of 2.35 because I'm adding back that person that should be in the business moving forward. Now they've gotten away with it, for the life of their company, but moving forward in order to grow, that's a position that is needed. So if somebody's hiring, in front, ahead of the curve when they're ready, there's going to be no reductions for EBITDA. I would encourage business owners not to manage a business to a P&L and be so numbers driven, where it's going to affect their boat, because it may affect your boat payment today, but it's going to afford you a house in Vail or a house down in Florida, moving forward, because now, you're associating a multiple to it. So you're looking at that $150,000 today, but associate a 5 times multiple to it, and that's the difference.
$750,000.
Yeah, you got it. So that's what it is to a business owner. So I would say don't be penny wise and pound foolish, but it's also calculated growth. As you're growing your business, sometimes in the smaller businesses you don't need those $150,000 people, but have somebody in place that could either you can grow and mentor and really get to that talent level of the $150,000 person, or wait until your company is able to absorb that. I would tell you at $2.5 million of EBITDA, I think you can really absorb a controller, and you should have had one.
You think so?
Right? Yeah. If you're at $500,000 of EBITDA, I get it, bookkeeper, but then as your organization continues to grow, don't let your organization outgrow your people, because you're going to suffer later on.
So, and I think that's it. Kind of brings into your model is, let's kind of switch and move along to the integration and how you fill those gaps, right? Because I think this is why it's so important to understand for these entrepreneurs that are sitting across from a private equity firm or a potential buyer, what value are they going to bring? Like you said, there's a lot of money out there, and there's a lot of really dumb money where there's no value other than the capital, and versus someone that's going to strategically fill gaps. So as you've gone through this due diligence process and you've kind of assessed where the holes are in the ship, how do you then, what is it? So the owner's mindset, how important is that? And then as you start to fill these gaps, how do you interact, and what's the integration look like as you continue to move forward?
Yeah. So I would say it varies depending on the company's needs, but we're not dictatorial. What we do from a board perspective is provide strategic direction. We look at 500 to 600 businesses a year. We invest in 1 or 2, so we're very, very selective in the businesses that we look at. So if we're looking at 500 businesses a year over 25 years. That's almost, what is that, 15,000 businesses,
A lot.
12,500, something like that over, yes, over a period of years. So we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We also have senior operating partners. One's run 17 different businesses, one's run 3, and the others run 2. In varying end markets and industries where we have connections, where we've been in the industry before. How can we accelerate growth? How can we mentor the CEO, the business owner? Can we answer those questions? And Mark can actually tell you, one of the things that he drove at TGC is what's near and dear to our heart, Ryan, is Traction by Gino Wickman and running the entrepreneurial operating system. That helped Mark really from a strategic direction standpoint, as it was really just him and a COO. And in the first year, we hired a VP of sales and marketing, a CFO, and a VP of supply chain. In year number 1, did 3 facility moves. Okay.
Wow.
Did an ERP implementation integration and grew the business during that time frame. So, it's kudos to Mark and his team to being calculated, to walk before they run, and being able to get everything done. If they didn't have a plan in place, it wouldn't have been successful. So Mark and I talk really casually, just at least once a week. That's not a cadence for us. It just happens, just pick up the phone, or he'll pick up the phone and say, hey, this is what's going on with the business. Any thoughts? Or I'll pick up the phone and just say, hey, what's going on? Do you want to go to dinner this weekend? And then we have monthly reporting, and then we also have quarterly board meetings. So that's our communication and cadence.
Well, I think you were saying that. I mean, it's a partnership, and I think this is, give me your perspective, Bobby, on like the mindset of entrepreneurs, right? So obviously, Mark is still enjoying and looking into the future and having fun. Where how many times?
We hope so. We'll hear from him next.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll get it straight from the horse's mouth. But versus, I guess where I was getting with that is, you look at all these business. I mean, that's a significantly high volume of businesses that you're looking at. And how many times do you see it when, someone might have a good business, but they're just done, and you look at them as an individual, and that literally will deselect because they're burnt out, and you're essentially, they want to drop the bag in your lap. I mean, how quickly can you assess that? And, I think it's important that people look way ahead of time so they don't get to that. But I mean, tell me how do you feel when you see that?
We feel that we're going to run in the complete opposite direction. And I'll tell you that, right away, if we see a business owner that's like that. So for us, when we're focusing on leverage recaps, where we're partnering with incumbent ownership, if a business owner is 50 years old, okay, now that business owner has a lot of run room to go in their career, and they want to sell us their business, and they don't want to participate in the equity, or they don't want to continue to run the company. What do you know that we don't know? It's the first sign that just provides us with some agita, and it maybe, good, bad, or indifferent. It just provides this immediate lack of trust that they know something that we don't know. Now, if a business owner is 65 or 70 years old, I get it. So certainly understand. And then what you have to do is, for example, that business that I discussed, $6 million in revenue, 2.5 of EBITDA. That business owner is 65 years old. He's lived, outside of the state down south for the last 12 years. Now, I think he's important to the business he's provided strategic direction for the business, but the day-to-day operations and everything that's been going on, he hasn't been there in 12 years. He's 65. He would like to retire. So I understand that. What I would like to do, though, and this is how I would present it, is, I'm going to present him an offer, and I also want him to, I'm going to provide an incentive for him to have 5% of the business moving forward. And now it's not a ton, it's not 20, 30, or 40%, but I don't want him to walk away day one. I would like him to be a board member, and I want him to be a vested board member where he can still, he's been in the industry for 30 years. I don't want that walking away day one. We haven't been in that market for 30 years. We will never know as much about a particular business as a business owner does, and we're smart enough to realize that. What we can do is, from our experience in different businesses, provide business best practices, open up, doors to new industries, to new customers, to lean manufacturing, to EOS. You know, provide value in different ways outside of that business owner's box that they've been in for 30 years. But in terms of getting in that box, we will never know that box as well as they do.
Yeah, no,
So we don't want them to walk away day one.
and I think you hit on a bunch of really good points. And but going back to the 50-year-old, so let's say, so that I totally get it, because that's the same thing I would ask is like, what do you know that we don't? Why do you want to walk away? Let's throw a curveball, Bobby. What if that was me? I was 50 and I said, here's I want out. But let's say I had, in EOS terms, I had an integrator, so a COO or a general manager. I had an executive team, and it was a passive investment for me.
Yeah.
Totally different, right?
Then I would say totally different. If you weren't in the business day to day, now can I ask if you were the visionary?
Right. I think that, and for the listeners who aren't familiar with EOS, the visionary is like the CEO who's driving the strategic ship. I think that's a good question, right? Where I'm working with this gentleman who, he literally has an integrator and a visionary, and he's more like the board member now, and he's like in his 40s.
Yeah, and in that situation, we are okay with it. There's been different situations where we've had a business owner that, said, hey guys, just want to let you know, if we're going to do a deal, I go sailing 6 months out of the year. Are you guys okay with that? And we said, Bill, how long have you been doing that? He said, the last 10 years. I said, then we're good. Right. If the business has performed like this with you on a boat for the last 6 months, why don't you stay on it for 12?
Well, I think for the listeners, don't you think, Bobby, it's all about the building a healthy, sustainable business, because then it's just provide you with options, because no matter what route you go, you've answered all the questions and the concerns and the risks that a buyer would have.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. If you have a management team that can run the business without you, both strategically and tactically, it mitigates a lot of the risk for the private equity firm, because at the end of the day, most of the risk, it's probably 50-50 in business and the people. And I would much rather invest in a good business with great people than a great business with good people. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday, that's what I would do. So people, from our standpoint, are vitally important. And if you can have a team that can run your business, it'll help mitigate some of the risk from private equity, and you'd be able to really get the value that you deserve for the business.
I think that was a very good note as we're wrapping up here. So we're going to have the next episode in this series is going to be Bobby and Mark. So Bobby, as we're wrapping up, and we covered a lot of ground here, man. I've had a blast. Is there one thing that you want to highlight that we've already talked about, or if we kind of missed something in the journey, in the process, one thing you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, if most of the listeners are business owners, I would just, really encourage them to be careful, to be thoughtful in choosing the right partner. Even if it means sacrificing a few dollars up front, you're going to be much happier in the long run. And really due diligence on the private equity firm. Like I said a few times too, I would do the QOE beforehand to avoid any retrading that might happen. It'll certainly help mitigate that. It's really value your team. If you have the opportunity to build your team at the right time, I would suggest doing it.
Awesome. I really, really had a blast, Bobby.